hand up because there's probably more chance of me seeing that, and I can immediately address that question. But I just thought I'd jump in and we'll get into the issues which I'm guessing are the ones that are close to people's hearts and that we'll discuss more today. That these are mostly, well, assuming beds and the proposed release of additional beds in the national park, possibly new camping areas, commercial landing of helicopters at the resorts, and also the proposal to allow a single commercial tour operator to access Rawson Pass on a limited basis. Now, I really acknowledge that there are a lot of people who object philosophically to these because it's a national park and a lot of people would like to see no additional development within the national park. But I guess today, if there's one thing we could take away, it's just to look at some of these proposals objectively. What are the proposals? And I guess more importantly, what aren't they? Because there is a lot of talk, and for sure in the media, which tends to extrapolate things, but there seems to be a lot of discussion about some kind of broad-scale development within Kosciuszko National Park, and I can't stress enough that that's not the case. And I did say I didn't have a PowerPoint presentation, so what I was just going to put up as a bit of a back screen is one of the shots from the master plan. I presume everybody can see that. That's essentially a shot of Perisher. It's not a particularly outrageous shot. It could be any sunny Saturday or Sunday, or probably if it wasn't for COVID, any day of the week through this winter. The car park's full, and there's a lot of people there. They're the sites that we're talking about by and large with the SAP. Probably too often we've shown nice shots of mountaintops and streams that look unimpacted by man. But I guess what we're trying to do with the SAP and the plan of management is to get these areas right and allow for some growth. But through this SAP, allow for growth in a way that's planned and funded to ensure that the services which make these sorts of villages, resorts sustainable are in place. That's sewage treatment, water, waste management, all that kind of those kind of services, roads. They're the sites that we're looking at, and so the plan of management amendment does enable an additional 4,000 beds or thereabouts in places like Perisher, Thredbo, and some of the smaller accommodation venues. Now, I think it's fair to say that Perisher really hasn't seen. Well, I guess there's been no change to bed numbers in the resorts for many decades, and that's not a reason in itself why they should be increased. But through the SAP, it has provided an opportunity to see, well, what is a reasonable growth? What sort of growth could occur in these village areas without having any impact on the values of the park? And I know that's what nearly everyone is concerned about here, are the values of Kosciuszko National Park. The plan of management, and I should say that the plan of management, there's a lot of criticism that the plan of management has been, has been subservient to the master plan, and I can categorically say that's not the case. The plan of management and the POM they've basically been developed in unison. So there's been 21 technical studies which have been commissioned as part of the Special Activation Precinct, whether that be housing, social infrastructure, environment, infrastructure, just to look at how we can do things better. It's somewhat similar to the work which was done prior to the plan of management back in 2006, but I guess it's been a different process. It hasn't been National Parks fully driving it. So through this process, we've come up with an increase in bed numbers within the park, and also identified a clear framework, carrying capacity framework, where services and other infrastructure would be upgraded in accordance with any bed increases. and so through that process, we've developed the master plan, and then also the plan of management, which I guess enables those beds. The plan of management, however, needs to be a standalone document, and we fully acknowledge that. It can't just say have all these extra beds and we'll leave it at that. The plan of management, the feedback we're getting very clearly is it needs to identify how these extra beds will be released, and what environmental safeguards are there to ensure that even in these village areas, we are adequately protecting the environment. There are some other areas away from the resorts where we're looking at accommodation increases. Examples of that include Island Bend, which is a former snowy township. There's actually quite some significant asbestos issues through there because a lot of the old fibro buildings were just bulldozed and left behind. It's heavily disturbed. There's still bitumen roads, garden beds there from the old snowy days. And what we'd like to do is to give Kosciuszko a camping area that it really doesn't have. The best we've got at the moment are pit toilets and picnic tables. Have a camping area that totally fits with nature, but has some facilities that people like. So they're the kinds of other proposals we're looking at. The helicopter issue is one we're testing, where there has been a push for helicopters to be able to land within the resort areas only, not outside the resorts, as another experience. If it's something we're completely open to look at, but it's something that we want to put out there to see what other people thought of. The access to Rawson. Commercial opportunity, which ties in with the Snowy's iconic walking track that we're developing, where people have a true commercially guided experience, where people who maybe can't access the summit of Kosciuszko because they don't have the mobility can do so under strict guided conditions. I guess I didn't want to go into too much more detail. That people have a lot of questions. I just wanted to set the scene for some of the more controversial proposals, but I also just want to be clear that we're not talking about wholesale development across the national park. We're talking about areas like that I showed you before at Perisher. Okay, sorry, now I've got someone's hands up. Sorry, AJ Link. Can I ask who that is? And is that you have a question?
Hey. Thanks very much, Anthony. So just a question about the helicopters.
Yep.
In the COSI report, it mentions that the helicopters are not meant to interfere with on-the-ground visitors, and also that there will be consent sought, but it doesn't specify who consent is being sought by. So I'm just wondering how you guys intend to have a commuting helicopter service that doesn't interfere with on-the-ground visitors, particularly due to, sound pollution. And then also, like, whose consent being sought from? Is that the community or is that the resorts?
Yeah, okay. That's a lot of really good question packed up into that. I guess, firstly, with helicopters, national parks only manage takeoff and landing, so we have no jurisdiction over the airspace above COSI. And there already are joy flight companies operating over COSI, mostly through the summer, but there are joy flights, scenic flights operating out of COSI. So I think anyone who spends any time up there in Kosciuszko, summer or winter, would realise that there are helicopters in the air already. National parks, with our construction of walking tracks, because we don't allow vehicles into the alpine areas, we would do several thousand heli lifts a year for moving steel and rock to walking tracks. In addition to aerial shoot programs for deer and pigs, as well as a lot of other operational things. Through the winter, helicopters would fly close to a daily basis out of the resorts for medical evacuations. So what what we would look at doing if this proposal went ahead is to allow under a fly neighbourly agreement, which is essentially like an MOU with the operator, because, as I said, we don't control the airspace. But if we had a fly neighbourly agreement which said you will exit in and out of Perisher in a particular direction, which avoided the main range, we could do that. We don't have that control over other sightseeing flights that come over COSI, but that's how we would propose it to happen. Look, it's not going to be it's not a transport solution which has been suggested by people. It's really a proposal for a high-end tourist experience, which I think you'd be looking at a few flights a day on good weather, which is, you wouldn't be looking at more than a handful of flights a week, I don't think. But yeah, that's the sort of proposal I'm looking at. Does that answer your question?
Not really, because I'm wondering who is actually in the document. It specifies on page 23. It says that consent is being sought, but it doesn't say who that's being sought by. That's the question that I'd like answered.
So, Anthony, just to butt in quickly, I think consent's required now, right? So National Parks has to give consent for any flights at the moment in and out of the resorts, correct?
Well, I mean, if it's a medical landing, no, we don't. That they do it regardless, but we don't give consent for commercial flights to land in the resorts at the moment.
Yeah, so, but it's subject to you. But it is subject.
Correct. The consent would come from National Parks, but we're restrained, for want of a better word, through the plan of management. So we wouldn't give consent unless the plan of management was amended to allow us to give consent. But if the plan of management was amended, we would to allow helicopters, then we it would still have to be done by consent. So we would consent helicopters, and the intent in the plan of management would be to do that through a fly neighbourly agreement, which said, okay, you're going to come in and out of COSI, in and out of Thredbo or Perisher in a certain way, so as to minimise any noise impacts to visitors.
And is that like 3 or 4 flights from Thredbo and from Perisher and from Charlotte's every day, or is that just?
That's I guess that's what I would envisage. I don't think it would be, and maybe we need to put a limit on it. I don't know. It wouldn't be for me to say, right, I can't say right now there would only be 3 flights. That's kind of what I'm guessing. I know there's been flights between Hotham Falls Creek for about 30 years, which fly over the Alpine National Park. The advice from Parks Vic is that someone just joined, maybe, who's not on mute.
I think it's someone on their mobile phone. I'm just going to mute the person on their mobile phone.
Thanks. Yeah, that sounds better. So flights have been running between Hotham and Falls Creek for about 30 years, and the advice from Parks Victoria is that they haven't had any issues at all with complaints flying over the Bogong High Plains. Still don't look like I've answered your question.
Well, I guess it's just, you said that there's a lot of flights already happening with ambulance, like helicopters taking maintenance, and then we're adding this additional, potentially 12 flights a day from each resort. It's quite a lot of air space being taken up in one day. So I would think that there should be a cap given to any airline or helicopter providers on how many they can fly a day.
Sure. Yeah, good point. I mean, we'll take that down. Please make sure you include that in a submission if you're going to put that in. But certainly, yeah, good point. Yeah.
Anthony, it's Donna here. Hi, everyone. We might just take a call from, a question from the chat box.
Okay, sure.
Rob asked a question very early on about carrying capacity or increasing beds. So a study increasing beds, including sewage and water to cater for the extra capacity in the Alpine region. Is that something you can answer, Anthony?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. So certainly, I mean, the current plan of management says that a that bed numbers can only be increased through a whole series of mechanisms, and one of those is to review the carrying capacity of the resorts. And one of the technical studies which is available publicly online does set out a carrying capacity framework for Kosciuszko National Park, for the resorts, I should say, within Kosci. The framework itself doesn't say there should be X number of beds or whatever else, but that's not what a framework is set out to do. It's to really make sure there's a process in place for managing any excess beds and to make sure all the considerations, be them municipal services, social, whatever else, is taken and given duly consideration. So that's really one of the keys to going forward in this is this carrying capacity. And I really encourage people that there's so many technical reports, but if there's one to have a look at it, have a look at the carrying capacity framework.
Thanks, Anthony. I think Hugh Kingston's been trying to ask a question for a while.
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. Afternoon, everyone. Sort of adds to Robert's question, really. You talked at the beginning about the sustainability and then saying, well, there's 4,000 beds. I think the point of adding 4,000 beds potentially to the resorts parish of Thredbo in particular at a time of climate change is a pretty risky venture, I would have thought. But also, cars and car parking is such a huge issue now in the park, and I'm just wondering, and I haven't read the technical report, so that might be answered there, as to how you're going to deal with vehicle movements in the park if you build those numbers. And my final point really is, if you're adding those bed numbers to the resorts, isn't that going to eat some of the lunch of Jindabyne, which started this whole SAP process and the regional growth of Jindabyne, getting more people to stay in the park and investing in Jindabyne, but them competing more in the parish and Thredbo?
I guess, thanks, Hugh. I'll start on the car parking. And by the way, if I start to have some internet problems, please let me know. I did do a meeting earlier where I was breaking up a bit, so I may have to turn my camera off. But car parking is one of the critical access, and car parking is one of the critical issues for the resorts. And when you were talking, I just brought up the picture I showed before of a car park full, and cars heading back up over Piper's Gap, and they'll continue some kilometres down the road as well. So it was one of the drivers for including the whole mountains into the original Go Jindabyne study, is that you can't look at Go Jindabyne without looking at the mountains, particularly from an access and a car parking point of view. I guess, and one thing that's very clear is that cars alone can't be the only solution, the only transport way forward for Jindabyne. To access the resorts. And you're probably aware that a transport trial was set up in Jindabyne a couple of weeks ago, where there was a bus system was set up. Now, unfortunately, COVID's got the better of it, and it won't be going ahead. But the intention of that is to test how a regular bus service to the resorts would work. Now, there's all kinds of issues with that. People. Probably 95% of people come to Jindabyne in a car. Skiing needs a lot of gear, skis, hats, gloves, goggles, all that, and you've got 3 kids. It's not the easiest thing to pile everybody in a bus from Jindabyne and go up to the mountains when you've already come there in your car. So we realise that it's a big shift to get people out of cars. But when you look at the congestion issues that are in the resorts, there's no way that car parks can be the only solution. There is some opportunities for some modest increase in car parking in areas like at the back of Smiggan Holes, where there's an old quarry, so a disturbed site. But there is modest areas for car parking increases. So things like some sort of transport solution is going to be required. And there was a technical study done on transport, and a rapid transit bus system was what was identified as the preferred option for this environment. So that's the first part of your question, Hugh. The second one, in terms of taking away from Jindabyne, with the growth that the Snowy Mountains is experiencing, to be honest, 4,000 beds is pretty minimal in terms of the overall demand for people who want to come. So the forecast for the next 40 years, which includes the climate change scenario and includes a decrease in winter visitation from around 2040 in 20 years' time, shows that there is that Jindabyne itself can take anywhere up to about 20,000 extra beds. So the 4,000 in the mountains is not seen as taking away from Jindabyne, but really allowing the villages to develop in a way which makes them really year-round sustainable. I mean, we know Perisher is really only a winter resort. If there was some possibility of it being a year-round resort, some kind of infrastructure is going to be needed to create some sort of village hub and a village atmosphere.
I might just pick up another point that's just come through around parking fees as well. So what we're looking at here is a really complex system in between the beds, the parking allocations, the road capacity itself in and out of the resorts, the fee structures for the park, the numbers of passengers per car. Essentially, the decisions that we're looking at need to consider all of those, and the mass transit system that Anthony has mentioned. So the carrying capacity framework does try to anticipate all of those issues, as well as the amount of people that can actually ski on the skiable terrain. And what we're doing is trying to work through what's the best way to resolve all those issues to meet the needs of the expected demand, but also to obviously sensitive to the environment, but equally not having 1,000 cars turned back, on a busy Saturday in winter, which is what's been happening even this year and certainly the last few years.
Thanks, Julian. Ian, I can see you've got your hand up, but I think Monica was just before you guys. So if you don't mind, I'll take Monica's question, then we'll go to Ian, and then we'll do some questions from the chat box, if that's okay. Monica?
Oh, I think my question was answered. I just had concerns about the bed numbers. Can you hear me?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Monica.
Yeah, but there is, I do have this question about how those beds are allocated to developers. Is that presumably existing what do you call them? I'm thinking of lodges, but also commercial and club lodges have the ability to access those new beds.
Is anyone else hearing that?
Yeah, no, it's gone now.
Yeah.
Anthony, are you able to answer that question?
Sorry, I didn't quite get the end of it. I'm sorry. I didn't know whether you'd finished.
Oh, okay. It's really about the allocation of new bed licenses to existing lodges and commercial and hotels and existing hotels, lodges, private and commercial in the ski resorts. Or is this allocation going to be towards newcomers into the resorts?
I guess the simple answer is that there is no pathway yet for allocating the beds. This is a high-level master plan, and the plan of management is enabling it to happen. We haven't said this is how it's going to happen. This is how it's going to be. Obviously, there are some opportunities for sites within the village for some new infrastructure or renovating older infrastructure. And one of the issues with the ski resorts, and particularly Perisher, is the lack of any development over the last 20 or 30 years. A lot of the buildings are quite old and really are in need of some sort of refurbishment. So if that refurbishment came with an expansion, then that would be another way of looking at it as well. In terms of who pays for it, probably one thing I can talk a little bit about it is one of the overall, drivers of the SAP is infrastructure development. So it's really split up between government-led infrastructure and that's where Department of Regional New South Wales come in because they have funding available to lead infrastructure delivery for non-commercial infrastructure, roads, sewage treatment plants, those kind of things. They're non-commercial, and there's opportunities through this SAP to deliver this infrastructure to meet the growing needs. But for commercial development, such as hotels or lodges or businesses, the intention is that would be led by private development, but there would need to be a process, some sort of an EOI process to allocate those beds.
Thanks, Anthony.
Okay,
Thanks, Monica. Ian?
So do you mean Ian or Leslie?
It says Ian on our screen, so it's in your hand up is in your box, so it must be you.
But there's a microphone.
Do you have another another device logged in somewhere? Because it looks like you're online twice.
Mm-hmm.
I can get rid of the other one if you want me to. I'll just move it from the meeting. Oh no, that didn't work.
Look, I'll stop this. Yep, you're right. So I've got a couple of questions. One is, so with the IPCC reports just come out saying that every tonne of carbon is not doing our climate any good and will affect everyone, including us. Is the government going to have a carbon budget for these proposals, which seem to me that on the total they will be putting a lot of carbon emissions into the air? I did notice that there is a talk in the documents about reaching carbon neutral, but the target is 2065. So that's not much use. So that was one question about carbon budgets and assessing the impact on climate. The second question is that the introduction to the Plan of Management amendments say that the amendments are required to change the narrative to raise bed numbers and also a greater focus on sustainability and carrying capacity and environmental stewardship. So could Anthony or someone tell me what the greater focus on sustainability, I'm hoping it's environmental sustainability, not just commercial sustainability, and what increases and environmental stewardship is in this package? Thank you.
I guess the focus for sustainability, environmental stewardship is around the requirement of all new developments to have an environmental management system, to international standards, ISO 14001, for all new developments. Now, I know that in itself doesn't save the world, but it is an environmentally sustainable framework to allow us to go forward. We're also looking, and I do admit that our wording in the plan of management is probably not strong enough, and the feedback from that we're getting shows it needs to be changed. But a development control plan is another document which will be developed from this, which will basically set out the parameters for development in the ski resorts. And we really need to make sure that the POM needs to have wording which ensures that the development control plan provides the right environmental safeguards, and also provides the right environmental safeguards for future development, but also has triggers, if you like, which only allows development when certain parameters are met. So there's the EMS, Environment Management System, there's Development Control Plan, and then there's also the Carrying Capacity Framework, which we've never actually had before within the resorts, which I alluded to before. I guess they're the three main ways that address that question you just asked.
Oh, and the climate budget question?
Yeah, I was hoping you forgot about that, because I might actually. I have to admit that the POM doesn't deal in the whole carbon space. So if Anthea or Julian can talk about that bit, because that's really gone beyond the scope of what the plan of management is, and maybe that's feedback in itself. But the plan of management doesn't really deal with carbon neutral or negative.
Yeah, look, and Anthony, I can't really talk to it either. I'll probably need to take that question on notice and come back to you with a response.
Yeah, what we could say, I guess, is that we're certainly conscious of the need to look for biodiversity offsets and so on when needed. So there will be provisions made for those in areas that we're planning on any development as required. But the broader aims of the SAP are to protect the environment, and environmental management systems will be in place across all the precincts going forward, especially obviously the national park.
Julian, can you tell me what areas that might be available for offsetting the alpine and subalpine areas in Kosciuszko National Park?
Not yet. No, I couldn't.
No.
Good question.
Thanks, Julian.
Thank you.
I think, Deidre, we might go over to you. You've got a few questions in the chat. And Anthony, I'm not sure if you can see Deidre's question there, but it says, first you stated commercial operator would use the summit track to support the iconic walk. Then it became high quality guided tours for people who couldn't otherwise access the summit. Is it one or the other or both?
Okay, Deidre, I guess just to give you a bit of a history of the iconic walk, we were given the funding to provide an opportunity for the public to provide some high quality walks, but part of it was also contingent on a commercial experience. We all know that great walks are the flavour of the month. Cradle huts, Bay of Fires, Three Capes, all that kind of stuff. And what people generally hang their hat on is exclusive accommodation. Clearly, we don't see that fitting in Kosciuszko. So there is obviously accommodation at the resort, but there's one problem, I guess, is the day where you go up Kosciuszko, walk the main range, past Blue Lake, and back to Charlotte's. Whether you go from Charlotte's or from Thredbo, it's a big day, and possibly too big a day for a lot of people. So we were trying to come up with a solution which avoided this idea which had been put to us to have accommodation up there, which we've completely ruled out. And so how can we actually provide for people who can't do that in a day, and also are happy for a commercial experience? And so what we thought is, if we had a single commercial operator access Rawson Pass once a day, early in the day before walkers start, to drop them at Rawson Pass, to let them access Cosy, walk the main range, and then be back to Charlotte Pass. Given that the road is used by small trucks to pump out the toilets at Charlotte Pass, for maintenance works through the summer holidays and Easter, every day we have Discovery Rangers go up there just to have a presence up at Rawson Pass to make sure people are safe and give them a positive experience. So there are vehicles going there. So I don't think an extra vehicle early in the day is going to impact the experience as such. I get it that it's a step, seen as a step backwards almost, because the late Graham Warboys was very strong on closing that Summit Road for good back to Charlotte Pass. So I really get that, and I acknowledge that it's almost a regression for people who are aware of the history. But what we're trying to do is provide an experience fitting for a great walk, but without going down this messy path of accommodation. So is it for high end, or is it for people who can't access Cosy? I guess my answer to that would be both, but based on that history I just gave you.
Thanks, Anthony.
Can I ask Deirdre, is that explain what you meant or not? I'm happy to go into more detail. You're on mute there, Deirdre.
Unfortunately, Anthony, it explains what you meant all too well. I was hoping that it might at least be one or the other.
Okay.
But Anthony, you seem not to have heard of incremental development, and yet you've been around parks for a very long time. You keep saying something's already damaged, so let's damage it a bit more. The summit track's still there, so let's use it a bit more. There's a few helicopters, so let's have a few more. Haven't you heard of incremental development?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thanks, Deirdre. I guess what we're trying to do is come up with ways that allow people to visit COSI. There's a huge demand summer and winter, and so we're trying to cater for those visitors in a way which doesn't further impact the environment. I guess we can put a big gate up there and say it full is full, and I have seen a few comments come up saying we should be doing that. But we're trying to find ways which allow visitation at a higher number than it is now, so people can come and appreciate this part of the world, but in a way which doesn't detract from it any further. Yep, but I can't argue with what you're saying.
No, you can't.
Deirdre, Mick Pettit here. The other issue we looked at very early in the piece is, do we look at new areas and new sites for development, or do we consider the existing sites for development? So I get your comment about the increase and changes there, but when we considered opportunities for development, we looked at sites that were already impacted rather than trying to select new sites. So that was the principle behind it.
Well, I don't envy your task, Mick or Anthony.
Thank you. Well, we've got time for one more question before we wrap up, and any questions that we haven't addressed in the chat, we will address them and send you a QA with responses. So again, Ian.
Yeah. Do you realise that with the summit proposal for access to visitors in the way that you've described, Anthony, sets back 40 years of policy, 40 years of a very strong program to protect the summit area. By allowing this kind of transport to the summit, you open the Pandora's box for a shuttle bus in the future, for incredibly increased pressure for return to the days when transportation to Rawson's Pass and even the summit is demanded.
Okay, thanks for those comments there. Yeah, I understand that for every management action, there's a new risk that comes up, and I totally take that point on board. Thanks.
And Ian, Mick here again. Sorry, and by a lot of the comments that I've heard this afternoon, it's the concern about what's into the future. What we're discussing now, some can live with, but it's what goes beyond is where you're really coming from.
Thanks, Anthony. Would you like to wrap up?
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to explain the proposals that have been put forward. We really, really do value your input and submissions. And yeah, I encourage people to put a submission in. What we really want to hear are reasons why something is good or something is bad. But I guess I just keep honing on the fact that we're focusing on areas which have existing development. And I know, Deirdre, I take your point that you see that as incremental development. I guess it's how do we cater for visitors in this beautiful part of the world without looking at new areas which haven't been impacted at all. I really want to thank everyone for their comments. I do know a lot of you personally. If you've got comments, yeah, I'm happy to take more questions just so you understand what the proposals are. I don't ask you to agree with them all, but as long as you understand what the proposals are, it's not a wholesale development, new resorts across Cosy or anything like that. As long as you know what we're looking at, I guess. So that's all I've got to say. Thanks, everyone.
If I can just jump in very quickly, Mick here again. So while you've got a master plan and the plan of management, they are two very separate documents in that they're on exhibition at present, and you can make submissions to both of those documents or each of those documents. And I'd urge people to make submissions. Obviously, the submissions phase that we go through looks at the issues and issues raised, and then we'll have commentary on each of those issues. So I would urge take the opportunity to do a submission on the master plan or the plan of management or both.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Have a good evening.
Thanks all.